The Clips Captured Before Horror series always reminds me that every day is a gift. Friends, family, acquaintances, they're all something to be treasured because everything can be taken away with no warning or alarm. In an instant, the life you came to love can all be blown apart. I'm Ryan from Tragedy Tales, and to remind us of that once more, this week, yet again, we're diving straight back into 5 more horrifying clips captured right before horror. From the man who jumped into icy waters to his doom, to an air balloon trip that swiftly turned into a horrible nightmare. This week, we've got the lot. So strap in and draw the curtains, and let's get right into it. Sometimes we make decisions that are stupid. Sometimes we make decisions that are dangerous. We're only human, and we've all done silly things. We can only hope to learn from them and be grateful that we're still here to tell the tale. Unfortunately, some just aren't that lucky. The combination of both stupid and dangerous often leads to deadly consequences, and this entry is a prime example of that. This first clip was recorded in Ukraine, near the village of Kupeliskva, on the cold early morning of Saturday the 5th of February 2022. That morning, a 38-year-old man known only by Alexander made his way down to the Chortomilk River in Ukraine's Dnipropetrovsk region. It was cold and in the middle of winter, so the river was totally frozen over, with waters underneath racing at a -5 degrees Celsius. Alexander was at the river that morning to celebrate the Orthodox Epiphany, a Christian tradition in Eastern Europe where believers plunge into icy waters to commemorate Jesus' baptism in the River Jordan. Now the idea with this is that you'd plunge in, sort of like a baptism, and then resurface in just a moment, with the water cleansing your entire body and spirit. Along with him, he brought his wife and a friend with a chainsaw to cut a hole in the ice. Alexander wanted his wife to record him so that he could post the celebration onto his social media. So, the clip begins showing Alexander stood on the ice, and quickly he begins to undress down to his swimming shorts. As he does, a chainsaw can be seen cutting a large hole in the ice, ready for Alexander to jump in. Then, all on camera, without even thinking twice, Alexander leapt feet first into the turbulent, murky waters and vanished in a second.
Тобі не холодно? Ні. Молодець. Боже, тобі не холодно ногам? Ой, Боже, я не можу, бо як це холодно. Господи Боже, хоч би ти не заболів. Молодець. Ой, Господи Боже, як це можна? Мама! Боже, де він? О, Боже! О, Господи! Боже, де він? Де він? Де він? Де він? Сюди! Ой, Люша, не впади! Не впади, де він? Боже! Дивись, його не попи... Де він? Я не можу, Боже! Ой, я не можу! Господи, де він? Я не знаю, що робити! Визивати спасателів!
Under the water, you can only imagine what was happening to him as he was violently swept away down the river, slowly realizing that there was no way out. Every second from here on out dragged into a lifetime, as the surface of the water remained still. Shortly after this, first responders arrived at the scene and began efforts to find Alexander and try their best to save his life. Ambulance crews positioned themselves near the ice and sent in divers to try and assist. Over the next several hours, many divers entered the river but failed to find any sign of him. They continued searching, and the following day he was finally found at the bottom of the river, 70 feet downstream. Experts suggested that he would have died almost instantly after entering the water due to cold shock. What did he think would happen here? Did he think there was no currents in a river? What makes it worse is that there is actually proper places where you can go and do this and be supervised by officials and do it safely. But Alexander decided to be different. He decided to go and do it on his own, drill his own hole, and it led to his horrifying death right in front of his friend and his beloved wife. I've actually covered a pretty much identical case from a few years ago where a woman leapt into a hole doing the exact same epiphany tradition. She too was swept away and died. I'll link that above if you're interested in that. But as I said at the start of this entry, sometimes we all make silly and dangerous decisions, but in this case there was no second chance. He died in one of the most horrifying ways imaginable, and it was totally avoidable. Next up, we've got a clip that was captured on the evening of May the 17th, 2025 in New York City. With the Statue of Liberty, Central Park, and the epic Brooklyn Bridge, New York's no stranger to spectacle. The towering skylines of Manhattan are home to approximately 8.5 million residents, making it the most populous destination in the entire United States. Because of this, millions travel all across the world all year round to experience what New York has to offer. I've never been myself, but I'm sure it never fails to leave a lasting impression. But that fateful night of May the 17th, that impression was anything but good. That night, the Cuauhtémoc, a gleaming 3-masted Mexican Navy training ship, was docked at South Street Seaport in Lower Manhattan. Measuring 147 feet in length and painted in pristine white, it looked like it was over 100 years old, but it was in fact not. This ship was actually only built in 1981 by the Mexican Navy as a sail training vessel. Since then, it had spent decades circling the globe, carrying cadets and officers across oceans as a symbol of heritage and pride. The Cuauhtémoc was at this port because it was currently on the Consolidation of Mexican's Independence 2025 tour. This tour's aim was to visit 22 ports in 15 countries as a training mission for cadets, as well as to promote naval training and Mexico's message of peace and goodwill. The duration of this voyage was approximately 7 months, covering over 25,000 nautical miles. 2025's tour started from Acapulco in Mexico on April the 6th. By May the 13th, they had reached their third stop in the tour, New York City. Here they planned to stay until the evening of May the 17th to give those on board time to stretch their legs and enjoy the Big Apple. On board were 227 people, including young naval cadets, many of them embarking on their first major deployment. The Cuauhtémoc stayed docked until the 17th, and then it was time to set sail once more. As the evening sun dipped below the skyline, nothing was out of the ordinary. Until precisely 8:26 p.m. As the Cuauhtémoc began its departure, almost immediately, something was wrong. As the crew tried to storm ahead, captured by several people by several angles nearby, the power cuts in the ship, and then it begins to reverse, fast and uncontrolled, right towards the Brooklyn Bridge. As it was reversing, being dragged by the currents of the East River, what looked like 50 cadets were stood on each of the 3 masts. They were stood there supposed to be showing the people of New York what an exit in style looked like. There was no time to react as the crew realized the danger. They had no time to correct the course before it was too late. Shouts rang out from the deck, alarms blared, and onlookers recorded as the Cuauhtémoc slammed into the Brooklyn Bridge, traveling at 6 miles an hour. Just 6 minutes after leaving the dock, it had crashed. In the impact, its 147 feet masts snapped like matchsticks against the bridge. Many people watched in shock as the entire thing unfolded. They could do nothing but grab their phone and record. Screams filled the air, and panic erupted as several cadets now found themselves dangling precariously from the masts, suspended over 150 feet drop to the deck below. Within minutes, the New York Harbor Patrol, the US Coast Guard, ambulances and fire units arrived to the scene to assist in any way that they could. As many as 19 to 22 sailors were injured, the majority of which were positioned on their sails. While some injuries were light, for two cadets in their early 20s, this voyage would be their last. 20-year-old America Sanchez and 23-year-old Adao Marcos had both fallen 150 feet to their deaths below. Absolutely tragic. The Quatermaut was forced to return to dock, broken and barely operable. Its mission was over for the foreseeable future. The Brooklyn Bridge was closed for some time as structural engineers inspected the damage to make sure that it was safe to still travel on. In 2 hours, the structure was deemed safe enough to reopen, but by then, the crash into the bridge was international news. Clips of this incident spread like wildfire, showing multiple angles of the tragedy as it unfolded. The sailors that weren't injured moved over to another ship to continue their journey, while investigations were launched from both sides to determine what exactly occurred. At the time of writing this, the US Coast Guard, as well as the National Transportation Safety Board, have begun investigating as to whether the cause was human error, mechanical failure, or something else. Obviously, something went terribly wrong, but what exactly, as of writing this, is still unknown. What is known, however, is that over 200 crew members left port that day, feeling safe and happy, and 2 never returned home. Their families in Mexico received notifications that they had died in service, not at war, but in a place where they were training, in a place that they were supposed to be safe. The Quatermaut was meant to represent history, pride, and resilience. But on that May evening, it became an 1,800-ton reminder that even beauty, fashion, and honor can be crushed in a matter of seconds and leave 2 aspiring cadets dead. Next up is a clip recorded in a country that's become all too familiar on this channel, India. It begins in the quiet village of Manalur. Nestled between your typical tourist destinations are the Pulaveli Falls. Hidden within the hills of Tamil Nadu, the Pulaveli Falls are more of a local secret. Known to villagers and a few adventurous travellers, the falls begin as a quiet stream weaving through a thick forest, before suddenly launching off a cliff with a jaw-dropping vertical drop. The water doesn't trickle, it plummets off of this cliff. Slippery rocks line the ridge, and there are no railings to keep you from making a fatal misstep. It's the kind of place that feels untouched and raw, ideal for photography. But on the afternoon of the 4th of August 2022, 26-year-old AJ Pandian, a farmer from the local area, had come to the falls with a friend to explore the place and take in the beauty. As the two explored the area, they made their way to the main attraction, being the large waterfall. Of course, as they got to the waterfall, it was at this moment that they both decided to get a photo for social media. You know where I'm going with this. To make this extra special, AJ stepped closer to the edge to pose for a photo. He slowly lowered himself down the rocks and edged ever closer to the powerful water. He reaches where he wanted to get, and there he poses for the camera, looking at the water. This is when AJ tried to turn around and come back up to the waterfall, and as he does, he slips on the algae-covered rocks and tumbles down. His friend could do nothing but shout his name as AJ barreled down the gorge like a rag doll. AJ's friend called emergency services, and police and forest rangers were called to the scene, and here they started a search operation for his body. After 48 hours, he was still not found, and it wasn't until the 9th of August, 5 days later, that his battered, lifeless corpse was discovered miles downstream. This case is just one of those examples of how quick life can turn. A lot of people underestimate how slippery wet, slimy rocks are. They're actually more slippery than ice. Literally one mistake and it could all be over. So don't put yourself in this position. To risk your life for the sake of a few photos, it's just not worth your life. So next time you think about posing for a photo for social media, think twice, because it really could be the last thing that you ever do. Hot air ballooning is supposed to be a fun pastime. Go up in the air, see awesome things from above, usually with your loved ones, and have the time of your life. It's great fun, and it's surprisingly safe. While it's not nearly as common as commercial air travel, the numbers show that it's actually much safer by comparison. Accidents involving balloons are exceedingly rare, and when they do happen, balloons have safety measures in place to bring them down safely and avoid calamity. That said, like with any thrill-seeking activity, there's always some level of risk. With that in mind, this entry begins on the 21st of June 2025 in Brazil, or more specifically, southern Santa Catarina in Praia Grande. Now, Praia Grande is a well-known hotspot for hot air ballooning, with over 100 balloon flights taking off every day. Ballooning is so popular here that it's even become a romantic tradition, with couples of Brazil celebrating Valentine's Day by going ballooning in June. But on that fateful day of June the 21st, 2025, it wasn't Valentine's, it was completely normal, completely ordinary, until it wasn't. That morning at around 9:30 AM, 21 people gathered at a launch site in Praia Grande, excited and eager to soar into the sky. Here they boarded a hot air balloon operated by a local tourist company. Each of them paid around $102 each for a 45-minute ride that promised sweeping views across the canyon-like valleys from over 3,000 feet up in the air. This balloon had a maximum capacity of 24, so it was almost filled when they took off at 9:30 AM. The weather conditions were clear in the region, wind speeds were low. It was the perfect weather for a flight. However, clips captured prior to takeoff shows the pilot struggling to even get it going, a worrying sign of what was to come. Despite the initial issues, minutes later, the balloon took off into the sky, captured by multiple people on the ground. At first, it looked like everything was going to plan. But you guys know exactly what I'm going to say. It was all going well until it wasn't. Just 2 minutes into the flight, disaster struck with brutal force. A fire ignited inside the basket. The first thing the pilot did was immediately bring the balloon down to a lower altitude, hoping to give passengers the best chance to jump to safety. This was all captured on camera. Footage posted to social media shows the balloon slowly going to the ground, already engulfed in flames. Despite this, it was still floating. All on camera, several people jumped from the basket, falling who knows how far to the ground. 7 people jumped from the basket. The balloon, weakened by the growing flames, continued to rise up into the sky and then eventually deflated and came crashing down near a local healthcare center in a wooded area just 2 kilometers from the launch site.
Meu Deus do céu! Jesus Cristo!
Around 30 military firefighters were dispatched to the scene, but when they got to where the balloon had landed, it was horrible. 4 people had burned alive in the basket, and another 4 had died after jumping or falling. 5 people were seriously injured, including 2 with second-degree burns. Out of the 21 on board, 8 people lost their lives, making it the deadliest hot air balloon disaster in Brazil's history, as well as the deadliest in the world since 2016, when 16 people were killed after a balloon collided with power lines in Texas. The victims included 2 couples, a mother and daughter, a figure skater. Each of them were just enjoying themselves, having fun with their loved ones, and it turned into terror so suddenly. Local officials are working together to figure out what went wrong. The pilot has already given testimony, and statements from survivors are being collected. But this one was just awful. It's terrible to think that within just 2 minutes, almost half on board would be dead. This last clip of horror occurred in Santo Domingo, the capital city of the Dominican Republic. Known for its vibrant party scene and lively nightlife, Santo Domingo is known as a place where locals and tourists can enjoy a culture of dancing, music, and celebration. But on April 8th, 2025, a horrifying tragedy would occur that would shock the world and forever change hundreds of lives. In Santo Domingo, in the Atala neighborhood, was the Jet Set nightclub. Situated 7 kilometers or around 4.5 miles from the city, the nightclub was a popular attraction known for its live dance music, bringing a vibrant party scene to the streets of Atala. The building, originally constructed in 1973 as a movie theater, was later converted to a nightclub in 1993. After a decade of being open, in 2010, as well as in 2015, the building went under extensive renovation to transform the venue into a modern, trendy scene. These renovations included a new 2-story high ceiling that allowed for overhead lighting rigs, disco balls, as well as a larger sound system to be installed without obstructing the dance floor below, setting it apart from other clubs in the area. These renovations allowed the club to host 1,700 patrons, 1,000 on the dance floor, and 700 seated. It soon garnered a reputation for its Monday night offerings called the Jet Set Mondays. On these nights, the nightclub offered live music events, transforming the club into a cultural hotspot for many in Santo Domingo. It seems really nice, to be fair. It seemed like a nightclub where you could spend time with friends and family, as well as enjoy yourself, safely. Or that's what people thought, at least. Until April 8th, 2025. That evening, it was a special night for the club. Not only was it a Jet Set Monday, but they were also celebrating 50 years of being a Dominican nightlife icon. To mark this occasion, the club was hosting Ruby Perez, a legendary merengue singer. Approximately 515 guests, comprising of high-profile individuals, celebrities, politicians, athletes, as well as long-time patrons, flooded into the building, expecting a night of live singing and fun. But as the night got going, guests were enjoying themselves, eagerly awaiting 9 p.m. when legendary singer Ruby Perez was set to take stage. The night was going well, but Ruby Perez was fashionably late, appearing at 11:40 to perform almost 3 hours after he was supposed to. Of course, his appearance caused the crowd to go wild, but as he was performing on stage, at approximately 12:44 a.m., some reports came in that dust had begun falling from the ceiling. It started landing in drinks on those below. Something was happening. Then, minutes later, a terrifying crash came from above and gave no one chance to react. All captured on camera. In a flash, almost the entire roof of the club collapsed onto the 500 individuals that were partying below. Described as a similar sound to an earthquake, in just a second, tons and tons of concrete and debris came crashing down from above, slamming into the ground, trapping, killing, and crushing many instantly. The bright, colourful dance floor that was full of people having fun just moments previously was now pitch black, covered in debris, twisted metal, and blood. The energetic music was now replaced by the sounds of screams and pure terror as people began to realise what had happened. A portion of the guests were not fully buried and managed to free themselves shortly after the collapse, many sustaining serious injuries. These guests described a horrifying scene. Hundreds were pinned beneath heavy concrete slabs, some buried beyond view, some crushed beyond belief, clearly dead. It was just a total horror, but emergency services arrived at the scene within 9 minutes, and when they got there, it was just pure devastation. There was now a gaping hole where the 2-story high ceiling once was. It was a scene straight out of a horror movie. I couldn't quite believe it when I saw the photos and videos from the outside. It doesn't look real. It looks like the entirety of the roof collapsed, leaving basically nothing left. Rescue teams realized that they needed heavy machinery and a lot more help. Soon, an extensive search and rescue team was coordinated, with over 400 responders deployed to the disaster site. Local firefighters, paramedics, and military personnel worked through the night to save those trapped. But as I said, the scene was just totally unmanageable. Hundreds lay there trapped, and hundreds lay there dead. Over the next 12 hours, they used thermal cameras, dogs, drills, saws, any heavy machinery in the area to dig through the debris, and amazingly managed to save the majority of those trapped alive beneath the concrete. The main singer of the night was killed right in front of his daughter, who amazingly survived. As rescue teams worked around the clock, outside, a crowd of anxious relatives and friends gathered around the ruins of the club, desperate for news of their loved ones. The scene grew so chaotic that authorities had to use a megaphone, pleading to people to clear a path so that ambulances could get through. Some individuals were buried so deep that it took hours for them to be recovered, with the last survivor being pulled from the rubble on the afternoon of Wednesday, April the 9th, 26 hours after the collapse. Over 150 to 255 people were injured, with 190 ambulances arriving at the scene. Tragically, many died instantly from traumatic head and chest injuries from the falling concrete slabs. They didn't stand a chance. Recovery teams did not stop heaving out dead individuals until 59 hours after the collapse. And over the next few days, the death toll only continued to rise.
At least 33 people were killed and more than 150 others were injured,
killing at least 113 people.
The Jet Set Club in Santa Domingo collapsed Tuesday, killing nearly 200 people.
Authorities said the death toll had risen to more than 220 people. Mourners wept outside the Jet Set Club in Santo Domingo as crews sorted through the rubble.
By the end of this whole ordeal, the death toll stood at 236, an absolutely shocking number of people to lose their lives in a single night. The victims ranged from early teenagers to elderly in their 70s. This included former MLB players Octavio Dotel, as well as Tony Blanco and Nelsie Cruz, the governor of the northwestern Dominican Republic province. So this was a total, unimaginable tragedy.
Authorities here say they don't know why it happened, declining questions about the investigation, while the owner of the jet set says he's being transparent. Tonight, authorities say they finished searching the rubble, a grim reality for many, still some moments of relief. But yesterday, this family discovered their loved one, once missing, was found in the hospital alive.
Was packed with family members. This is the entrance of the Jet Set nightclub. And at this point, what we're seeing is just that crews are moving quicker and quicker in order to be able to find people and get those bodies to the morgue so that family members can, at this point, identify the bodies of their loved ones.
Many couldn't believe the staggering death toll. 236 people lost their lives in a club that they thought was safe. They were crushed and killed in the most violent and horrible way imaginable. Just tragic all around.
In a statement, Jet Set nightclub expressed its condolences and said it's collaborating fully and transparently with the relevant authorities to assist the victims and clarify what happened.
In the weeks that followed, grief poured out across the country. For the families of the 236 people that never made it home, one question remained. Who was responsible? Well, as is the case with most of the things that I cover on this channel, it turned out that this was a disaster waiting to happen. In 2023, a bolt of lightning struck one of the generators that was on top of the roof and caused a large fire. This fire was contained with no injuries, and the local firefighters deemed the building structurally safe. However, upon further inspection, civil engineers later concluded that the fire likely weakened the concrete, especially under the weight of new heavy rooftop machinery that was put there after the renovation. This was the suspected main cause of the collapse. To add to this, a government report and criminal indictment revealed structural support columns were also removed without permits during the renovation, and professional assessments were not obtained. Now you may be thinking that the owner might not have been aware. Well, the previous day, a worker messaged the owner warning that ceiling panels are breaking and that pieces of the ceiling were falling off, claiming that it was dangerous. The club owner saw these messages and refused to pay for any repairs, and instead decided to fix the roofing himself by placing plasterboard on the ceiling on the exact same day of the collapse. Further investigations also noted that cracks in the ceiling, as well as sagging and water stains, were all present, showing that the roof had been seriously weakened over time. Basically, the Jet Set nightclub was not safe for anyone to enter, let alone 500 people. It's absolutely ridiculous. The club, once a symbol of Dominican nightlife, had become a cautionary tale of negligence. They ushered people inside, leading to the deadliest non-natural disasters in Dominican Republic's history. After this news went public, calls for justice rang out louder than ever. Over 50 lawsuits were raised against the club's owners, Antonio Espaillat and his sister, and on June 16, 2025, the pair were arrested on suspicion of negligence causing death. The police said publicly that both defendants displayed immense irresponsibility and negligence by failing to physically intervene to prevent the club's roof from collapsing. Now this case is absolutely shocking. I cannot believe that it got to this point. The owner was well aware that the roof was collapsing and slapped on some plaster and thought that was just going to fix it, putting everyone's lives at risk. I'm sure that he will go to court and I'm sure he'll probably get a sentence, but as I've said in previous videos, no amount of money or prison term will bring these people back. Hundreds of families were shattered in the space of a single night, not to mention the horror that was inflicted onto those who survived, as well as first responders. I'm sure it will haunt them for the rest of their lives. But that is the end of the video. May everyone featured rest in peace. Bloody hell. Just when you think you've seen it all, I managed to find clips like this that leave us all flabbergasted. I just cannot believe some of these. Starting from the top, we've got Alexander, who jumped into the icy water in Ukraine. I already mentioned that I already covered a case that was literally identical to this, and in that entry, the victim just leapt into the water with zero thought as to how they were going to get out. Surely, any normal person's next thought after jumping in would be, how do I get out? Did the thought process not even go that far? We walked all the way down to the river and they didn't even think how they were going to get out, or they didn't even consider the currents. It's just so bizarre and just so careless. What's even worse is that this can be done in an official way with ambulances and safety teams on standby should anything go wrong. So all of this was all avoidable and just bonkers. Then we've got the Mexican Navy ship crashing into the Brooklyn Bridge. That footage went super viral this year, so I expect most of you know this case by now, but many of you might not know the details. When I first saw the footage, I was wondering why there were people on the sails in the first place before the crash. I thought it was some sort of like party boat or something. Now to discover that these were young cadets, most likely on their first voyage, it's even more haunting. Of course, we can't forget AJ that fell into the waterfall in India. Sometimes people fly too close to the sun and then they wonder why they get burnt, let alone climb onto the slippery rocks. It's just mental. All of us have made mistakes, but it's just sad that this one cost AJ his life. Then we've got the horrifying balloon crash in Brazil. That footage made me feel sick. Seeing the flaming balloon in the air with people jumping out to their doom makes my stomach turn. This has got to be one of the most horrifying entries that I've covered in a long, long time. Put yourself in their shoes. You're thousands of feet into the air, packed into a wicker balloon with 20 other people like sardines, and then a fire starts. It makes me panic and start to get a bit sweaty just thinking about it. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, and I do wonder what caused the blaze. Then we've got the horrible, horrible tragedy that occurred in the Dominican Republic. That one, I'm lost for words. Seriously, usually I've got something to say about this, but the death toll was so staggering. The carelessness was absolutely ridiculous. All of it is just, I don't know what to say. None of them should have entered that club that night. The owner should have closed it and assessed the ceiling for damage because it was literally collapsing in on people. Instead, he thought, I'm going to make some money, maybe we'll fix it next week. But as you all know, next week never came, and over 200 people lost their lives. Absolutely shocking, and I hope both owners, him and his sister, are held fully accountable for this. But what did you guys think of this one? As you guys know, I tried to read each and every comment below, so do let me know your thoughts. This one was just awfully tragic. So yeah, I'm really interested in what you guys thought. But if you made it this far, why not check out my Patreon in the description below. Over there I post videos completely uncensored, completely uncut, as well as ad-free. So if you're into that kind of thing, go ahead and check that link in the description below. And while you're down there, tickle that notification bell to be alerted when I release content such as this. But I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.